Hi,
Yes.
Emilio. Great to see you.
Hi, Mass. How are you?
I'm good. I've been looking very much forward to this.
Me too.
It's been a while since we started planning this, and now finally we're here to do this. Yeah, it's pre-recorded. Let's be honest about that, but it's
Yeah.
definitely a very valuable webinar for you guys here at Cupco, where Emilio and I work. We have a lot of different clients. You'll see in a moment on the slide where we sort of talk just a few minutes about ourselves. But we're very big, sort of handling, creating everything around communication around pharma, which is why we're here today to talk more about that. And I know, Emilia, your expertise
Mm-hmm.
is very deep into community management, which is why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
But in a second, we'll talk more about that. Just some more about us. I'm Mass. I worked here for almost 2 years, more than 20 years in advertising, and that is why I sort of, among colleagues, is perceived as the grumpiest guys in advertising. I said that's simply, it only comes down to me being here for so long. So and then we have more ray of sunshine. So as Amelia is, she's always the happy one, which is why we're on this one together, because she sort of lightens up where I bring the darkness. But Emilia, tell us a bit more about you.
Yes, Mass. So thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm the community manager here at Cupco, and I think I might have a bit of a untraditional way of thinking about community management, and I'm very much looking forward to our talk today and just to kind of maybe flip some things on its head and show how valuable it actually is and the kind of insights that it can provide. So I really try to emphasize this human and social first approach to community management and are looking forward to showcase how it really can make a difference to a pharma company.
Great. Sounds good. So before we move into it, as I said before, we have a lot of different clients here at Cupco. And as you can see on the screen right now, they span from motorcycle companies to big pharma to hair care, beauty brands, and so on and so on. So the expertise, the sort of the realm that we work in is very, very big, the big diversity in the clients we have. But as today, we're deep diving into pharma. I didn't write this, but apparently we perceive ourselves as quick like lightning and loud like thunder, and I think it makes sense in sort of creating a ripple effect in today's social media, both society and the world of social media. That you need to be loud like thunder to both get the attention from the target audiences and so on. So that's what we strive to do every day for all the clients that we have. As you also can see here, we're a lot of different places. The headquarter where we're sitting right now, in separate rooms though, is here in Copenhagen. We also have a department in Latvia, and then we also have a very nice office in New York. And this is sort of what every social media company will say that they do, but they will say it, but do they really do it? At least us, we're big on strategy. That's sort of the department I represent today, the skepticism of everything around social media, the foundation that all the creative is built on. Then we also have, like, where we're sitting right now in one of the studios where we produce a lot of content for our clients. Then paid media, our own paid media department, and then social execution, sort of that we make the campaigns come alive. And with all these steps, including also the community management and so on, we make the campaigns come alive through all the steps. Also means that if I need to talk to creatives, I don't have to call people or anything. I just walk a few meters and then I can have a sparring session with the creatives. So with all these steps, it is one very big advantage that we're sitting so close together, because the agility in today's social media landscape is definitely, yeah, it needs to be like that so that we can shift very fast and control the narrative for all the clients that we have. So what we're discussing today is community management. Emilia is going to be talking a lot about this and hopefully explain a lot about this. It is part of the strategy work that we do. We all always have it in there, but sometimes we also need elaboration of the value of it, which is what we're also explaining today. These are sort of the points that we're going through, and I'm personally looking forward to learn a lot more about this. But it is Why do you need to start manage your community today? How does community management sort of, how do you do it right as a pharma company? There's a lot of do's and don'ts and right and wrongs and so on. It can be a jungle, and that's why we have experts like Emilia. How do we move beyond just replying? There is a lot more to that than just replying, apparently. And how do you use community management strategically, which is also very important, and is why Emilia in her work supports and sort of feeds insights to the department that I'm a part of. Emilia, I read this the other day that on average about 88% of all comments on the Pharma post are ignored by the publishers. Is is
Mm-hmm.
is this right? Because that number seems tremendously high.
It is tremendously high, at least seen with my eyes as a community manager. And it's actually based on an internal audit that we did here at Cupco, of like across the pharma industry, and it is this high, and it is quite interesting because it is so many sensitive topics, and I think pharma companies are unique in that sense that there is really a purpose to a community or building a community, because people have the everyday struggles and actually come with a condition or living with something that they can come together about. So this is actually where you as a pharma company is actually, and community management is one of the best ways to actually stand out on social media, and yeah, on social in general.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is different, or how do you say, when we're talking pharma companies, I imagine, or it feels like, or it seems like you're of course closer to maybe your target audiences. It's very personal because these
Hmm.
are diseases, disorders, challenges that you're trying to help your target audience with.
Hmm.
So that's also why I was sort of scared about the 88%, because it seems so high that people sort of reach out, want to communicate, participate, and so on, and that there seems to be a tendency to just leave them alone and
Yeah.
not replying to this. So it seems also a bit of a lack of support or understanding of your target audience. Maybe
Mhm.
you'll how to say, talk about this a bit later, but I was just curious about, or I see it
Mhm.
as a part that should be natural when you're doing this kind of
Exactly.
communication.
And I guess that's also what social is very much about, is like creating this feedback loop that you actually have with your consumers and customers and patients and so on, in this case, that you have this feedback loop. And unfortunately, what we see here is that many companies are still using it as a way of, that it's mostly like one communication, and that people are trying to interact with the brand and actually want this community, but don't feel seen, maybe are not met in the comments that they're writing and the personal stories they're sharing. So that is, of course, but as we see in general, is also that unfortunately there are some brands where community management is not prioritized. It's not in the resources. That's also why we're here today, to like maybe showcase a little bit why it is so important. And you can probably already tell how passionate I am about this, um, because I think it really is both a starting point, but it's also like community management, because we can feed into the creatives and the strategy, as you say, but we can also be the end result. So let's say that you want to start as a pharma company to actually do social media in the right way. And this is where I think community is becoming the new measure of success, and not just in the pharma industry, but also just in brands in general. We see that across social, that the brands that are succeeding and like raising their brand value are definitely the ones that are has defined pretty clearly, well, how does a community serve my consumer and serve and like help my brand as well. So moving on, I think it's also, all this is kind of happening with the acceleration of TikTok and how the culture is just evolving all the time on there, and that's really a platform where we can see that community really does come first, and that has kind of spread throughout the media landscape. So these are examples of like proactive CM, or proactive community management, as we call it, where we can see how like using your brand voice and interacting as a brand in videos and posts and such where you might not be mentioned or it's not in direct relation to you, you can actually gain a lot of brand, like a lot of likes, and like tap into some trends. So for example, a condom brand here, that it was kind of encouraged that brands should interact, and a lot of fun things came out of that. So a condom brand, for example, mentioned, well, we didn't want to come too early, but we're here now, and that has over 300,000 likes. So it's a very low cost, very easy way to get some like showcase how your brand is, showcase your tonality, and yeah, the brand personality.
But is community management, is that a sort of, you perceive it as a new thing? Now you said it's sort of accelerated or escalated with TikTok, where you have maybe the tools, better tools to create the community around your brand. Because as the old grumpy boomer as I am in this company, or at least been called previously, I remember when we used to do print on sort of on paper, if
Mm-hmm.
you know what that is. We used to do that, and that was sort of the one-way communication, that we send it out,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like how it was. And
Yeah.
now with all social media, that's sort of changed the landscape a lot. But it feels like, or it seems like, from what you're saying, and also with the number before, is like it's still a learning process. That it's not a natural part of launching a social media campaign.
No, not yet, I think, or at least not in many agencies. In us, at Cupco, I think it's a pretty natural thing that we have this like feedback loop and that we keep using it. But I agree that I think it's already always been there. What I've also seen is that it's shifted more. I think a lot of people see community management almost as customer service, and I definitely do not see it as customer service. I think it's much more than that. Again, because you can showcase so much of your brand and use the insights that you actually get. It's not just, oh well, I've replied to this comment and then I'm just going to leave it again. It's very much about handling them, using the insights, seeing it as valuable data, but it of course also requires some qualitative analysis and actually looking down and meeting people and seeing people and like knowing that these are real people that are interacting with your brand. So we're definitely shifting, as you say,
Mhm.
from content to community, and community is just king. So previously it was very much like about having the edgy content, and it should be beautiful and high resolution and all these kinds of things, that it was very much about content. But now we see that it's the community that is becoming the king. So how can you keep an engaged base of followers? How do you keep getting them to interact in a way that is actually useful for your brand and that provides insights? So how can you create content that resonates with your audience? So of course we still want to create good content, of course, but if you just keep producing content without taking all the comments that you already have into consideration, then you're kind of just shooting blindly. Where it's like community management can really provide a lot of insights into, well, what kind of content does my audience actually value? Because a post can get a lot of reactions or all these kinds of things, but if all the comments are negative, then it, yeah, it might not be as possible as you might think if you
Of
only
course.
looking at these metrics.
Yeah, because
Um,
if you want to start a conversation, or if you want to join a conversation, which often social media is either starting or joining a conversation that goes on in society or amongst the target audiences, you need to know what people are actually talking about before joining. Otherwise, you're the weird one at the party just screaming stuff out.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. So really, as you say, how to take an active part in your community is also a thing to start thinking about. So here are some of the like we've just tried to like mention a few of the things that actually can benefit, or how community management can benefit. So for example, and like why you need to do it today. And that is really about that you can increase your audience engagement, as we talk about. You can deepen brand trust. You get improved retention and loyalty, because we also see that people are more likely to choose a brand if they have responded to them on social media. It can also give you a better understanding of your audience, their behaviors and interests, so you can really be on top of trends and also stay on top Of course, there's also some crisis communication into it as well. So really like being proactive, being like in the forefront, and actually making sure to handle any criticism or negativity in a or like maybe not in a positive way, but like handle it in a better way. So getting it right might be difficult at first, but that's why we're here today. And also we wanted to give like some concrete like tips and examples on how to actually do community right. So what we really want to emphasize today is also put your patients in focus. And this is very much about how it like timing is everything, because we are handling these more sensitive topics and adverse events in some cases where people are sharing maybe some product mentions or something like that. It's so important that you're timely and answer it and handle it quickly, just so it doesn't escalate. So there's really, it's all about like not waiting around, and also people are often opening up about their struggles, and it's not kind or very respectful to just leave them hanging. So some of these examples here are, for example, as I mentioned, that people have been taking some products, and well, how can that influence them? And this is where we are quick to say, well, there are somebody that can answer that better than us, so it's important that you see a doctor, or and actually meet people in that, and make them like make sure that they go and get the right help in the right place. Then it's really about empathy over sympathy. And what we mean with this is it's really important to make people feel seen and feel heard and feel understood. So really not just acknowledging them, but also making sure that you actually and showcase that you understand the situation that they're in, that you know their struggles, and that you can actually give them this feeling of comfort, and also making sure that they also just feel happy that they shared what they're struggling with, and also feel, as I said, seen and heard.
Without sending you into a long explanation, but when you started doing this, were you
Mhm.
surprised on the level of how people reached out, talked about personal stories and so on?
Yes, very much. And I think the level of empathy, and of course, this can come natural to a community manager that does this daily, but um, it really did surprise me. And I think um, it's important that these people are met, and it I can just also I've also acknowledged and also experienced the power of actually having this empathy and meeting people where they are, because it can really benefit a lot. So the next one is supporting first and then promoting. So every time, of course, we are a brand, we are a company, of course, we have um, some interests that we want to keep aligned, but it is really about supporting, and also, as I mentioned earlier, knowing when to actually send people on to resources that can help them better is super important. So don't start promoting anything. It's much more about supporting people and making sure that they have the right resources to find their answers and find the help that they need. So for example, here we also had from Novo a comment that asked about the two doctors for help, but like both had this, or both doctors wasn't seeing her, wasn't understanding her. So that was where it was really helpful that we could send her on to some resources, and that actually gave her some of the answers that she needed. And yeah, so we also wanted to show that it's really important to support first and then promote. So, for example, here in this in these two examples, we see how it's about being really helpful instead of promoting, and really making sure to direct people into like to the right resources when they're asking for help, and really keeping that in mind, instead of course, we're a brand and we're a company, and we of course have interests in getting people either to traffic to our website and all that, but it's more about leading people on to the right ways that they can find the answers and actually the help that they need.
And I guess also when you're doing this, it also helps finding out both what the audience is talking about, what they're curious about, and so on, but also finding sort of the holes in the cheese
Yeah.
on the website and the communication from the different clients.
Exactly. And this also comes with listening to your audience, because you're completely right that community management can really help to find those topics that are not, or questions that are not yet answered, either on your website or in social. So it can really, like listening to your audience through by monitoring, for example, sentiments and topics, like trending topics, can really help to, as a brand, that you make sure that everything is answered correctly, and also just that people are feel, for example, in this example, a lot of people with tinnitus might not be aware that they actually have it. So, and we could see that on the comments. So this could maybe provide some insights into, well, there is actually a need out there for people learning about the symptoms of tinnitus and what it takes, and is there a cure, is like who to go to get help, and so on. So trending topics and sentiment and so on, you can of course divide or choose that as a brand, what is most important to you, but that can actually really help both strengthening your content, your website, and so on. And then lastly, know your platforms is also a really important part of how to do community management right. So here are some examples of, for example, this is Instagram comments, and we can definitely see, and on the next slide, we have some TikTok comments, and like knowing the platforms and knowing the culture, because it's all like it's changing all the time, and staying on top of that, understanding what is happening on the platform and what the tone is, both on like culture on the platform, but also what is going on in the community. So, so here we have these, and we can definitely see, going to the next slide, that people are on TikTok are a little bit more savvy, I almost want to say, and there's a lot more slang going on. So it's really knowing that, and also understanding to speak the language that and match that to your brand, of course, is also a really important part.
Which is the reason why I don't do community management. I don't know half of this slang, so that's why
Exactly.
that's why there's 15 years between you and I. So that's perfect.
Yes. So our take on community management is, in short, that we believe that community management is about creating an inclusive, supporting, and inviting environment that encourages users to interact and engage in various ways with either your brand, and engage also with each other. So there are two sides to it that I also want to talk to you about today, Mess, because sometimes we see it as a whole, but we kind of divide between it. So there are, of course, reactive. That is everything that your brand is mentioned in. So really making sure that, of course, you react to the comments that come in. If you're tagged in anything, through those comments, you can kind of understand how your content is received, whether you're hitting the right target audience, if you are doing paid advertising, for example, and also how your brand is directly impacted, and like through sentiment monitoring and so on. But this is kind of the customer service way, and the whole kind of traditional way of seeing community management. But community, like social media, has changed, and so has community management. So we need to move past just replying to comments. So I'm a bit advocate for proactive community management, which is really about, as a brand, going outside of your way to engage with other brands, community, and users. So in this way, you can partake in external conversations, you can raise brand awareness in low-cost ways, and you can also make more users feel seen, and also through similar target audience, attract more people to your brand. So, for example, just so you see what that could be, an example of this could be,
Just
Pepsi
for
is
me
doing.
to fully get it.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I'm actually very curious about how to say the proactive part, because I understand the reactive one.
Mm-hmm.
They've asked, they talked about, and so on, but now you actually sort of you're attacking the conversation before it even started.
Exactly. So an example here is Pepsi is doing a really good job in this. So for example, Taco Bell posted about a Mexican pizza on a Thursday night football, and Pepsi goes in and says, well, you're going to need an ice cold Pepsi sugar to go with that, zero sugar to go with that, where people are super like positive and keeps commenting and say, wow, that's the crossover we didn't know we need. Wow, that's smooth. And like, so they get a lot of, like they showcase their personality in a really good way by doing proactive community management. So having a strategic approach to community management can really be helpful, because you can use it to these insights to tailor your messaging and content strategy to maximize relevance and also increase engagement. And two, you can use it to understand whether you're hitting the right target audience with your community communications. So of course, we can gather all these insights, for example, from sentiment shares, discussion patterns, frequently mentioned themes, and content performance. But we need to action those things and actually put them into, for example, a content strategy. So making sure to go over to the creative department, showcase what people are talking about, providing these insights. And then there's also the target strategy that you can really use different, like these actionable insights to actually improve it even further. So if you're doing paid social, using community management to really go in and tweak things, make sure that you're really hitting the target audience that you really want to, and also the ones that are most relevant and also resonate. So another example is, again, the positive versus negative comments. Well, if a post is performing super good to a certain target audience engagement wise, but is gaining a lot of negative comments, then you know, okay, something is off here. What is happening, and why is maybe a large part of my budget going to this certain audience, and so on. So there is kind of even when a campaign is active, there's also time to like course correct and make sure that that budget is also spent wisely.
So that's also where you sort of need the agility in your ways of working, that you maybe, if you started out with the best intention regarding your communication, who you wanted to target and everything, and then you sort of missed the mark, but then you definitely, through that agility, you can shift gears mid campaign
Exactly.
to get it right.
And you should. I think, again, with the speed of social and how fast everything is going, I think it's super valuable to keep community management as a way of like constantly being in touch with how your both organic and paid content is performing, and
Yeah,
then adjust.
that's one of the, how do you say, in the old days we would do something, then we would send it out there, and then fingers crossed that people would be extremely excited about it. But I guess today is very different, because if they don't like it, they let you know instantly. But then again, if they love it, they also let you know that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I guess the conclusion is, and hopefully I made this point very clear, is that community management really can help you not only to stand out as a pharma brand, but actually 77% of users choose a brand over a competitor as a result of positive social media interactions. So there is really a lot of potential for brands here to stand out and kind of be leaders in that sense, that they're meeting with like engaging with their audience and defining these communities and making sure that they're benefiting both the brand but definitely also the consumer. Other things that we see, and this is based on our own experiences here at Cupco, but a thing that we see is that when people see that your brand is not responsive, for example, if they're, as we talked about in the beginning, that they're just left there, and then they will be discouraged to try to interact at all. So if people are not responded to in the comments, we actually often see that there's a lot less comments versus the ones that, because the more engagement and the more brand interaction that people get, then people will also want to start commenting. We can also see that, or have experiences with, that increased engagement helps your ads to perform better because you get lower CPM costs. So here's the dream scenario. You start paying attention to community management. Then you start to successfully engage and respond to your audience. you start maybe monitoring it, getting these sentiment shares and getting all these good data and information, which help you gain insights that helps you fine tune your content and messaging. Then there kind of starts this ongoing feedback loop. So the improved content, or like these insights, helps you improve your content and helps your messaging, which can grow your audience even further. And then again, we kind of get the new insights, and then that just kind of rolls. And then lastly, your social media presence really levels up.
So what you're saying, that if you're one of those brands who doesn't reply,
there is a lot to win here and a lot
Yeah.
of potential to actually use it in a super powerful way.
Yeah. So if you're one of the ones who doesn't reply, you start doing that today, not tomorrow,
No.
today.
Today. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's good. So we want to make this happen, right? Because yeah, and this is sort of now we go back into the whole Copco realm and so on, and why we're so good at what we're actually doing. Now you've heard that we also, how to say, we practice what we preach, and this is just a bit more about us, that we understand the culture. We're social media experts. We do content and targeting in a very great way. We call ourselves experts in that. And then audience segmentation and understanding of how to use that and leverage that absolutely in the best way to get up with our clients. So if you're interested in serving your social community way better, it's all about starting replying. But Emilia, from what you've been saying, I don't feel it's something that you just start doing. You can just start doing on your own, of course, and that's a big step in the right direction. But it's not just easy peasy right away.
No, I mean, I guess staying on top of culture and understanding social, it's really what we're experts at here. And a lot is happening all the time. So if there's any need for sparring or anything, I mean, of course, you can start doing these in some small degrees. But if we really want to like start doing it in a way that has been very beneficial for other brands and that we have been doing for a very long time, then I, of course, would encourage anyone to reach out.
Great. And that's very easy to do. The phone number is on the screen. There's even a mail address. And then, of course, we'll pick up and reply to you as soon as possible. And then let's stay in touch, and looking forward to the next time to see. Thank you so much, Emilia.
Thank you,
For
Matt.
doing this. I thought I knew everything after 20 years in the field of advertising. I know shit about community management, but now I'm way clever regarding this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, that was why I was here. So thank you so much, Miss.
Perfect. See you guys.
Bye.